It was a moment that no one anticipated, not even the producers behind the segment. Jasmine Crockett was invited to speak on youth and politics, a typically calm and policy-focused discussion. But Crockett, known for cutting through the noise and pulling the curtain on issues others were too timid to touch, veered off course in a way that shook viewers nationwide. Without warning, she brought up Barron Trump by name. Asterisk, as she adjusted in her seat, she looked directly into the camera. "Let's stop pretending that Barron Trump is still some untouchable child," she began. "He's 18 now. He's grown, and if he's stepping into the political conversation, then we have a right to talk about what he's doing, not just who he is." Asterisk, the studio tensed. There was no teleprompter guiding her, and the panelists beside her looked frozen in place. It was rare for any public figure, especially a politician, to name Barron Trump in a political context. Since his father's presidency, Barron had been carefully protected from media scrutiny. Shielded behind the thick walls of Trump Tower and Mar-a-Lago, most people never heard him speak, let alone act, in a political manner. But Crockett wasn't. Backing down, asterisk, she didn't launch into insults. Instead, she asked a question that made people uncomfortable because of how direct it was. At what point does the child of a public figure stop being off limits? If Barron is engaging in political behavior, if he's showing up on forums, saying things behind usernames, pushing rhetoric, don't we owe it to the public to take that seriously? Asterisk, Crockett's tone wasn't dramatic, but it was firm. She never claimed to have definitive proof that Barron was involved in any digital subterfuge. Instead, she referred to a growing pile of investigative reports, some published by independent media watchdogs, suggesting that someone linked to Barron may have operated under anonymous handles on Message boards known for conspiracy-laden political discussions. There were no explicit accusations, just a sharp spotlight placed where one had never been shown before. Asterisk, let's just say plainly, she continued. There's a long history in American politics of powerful families protecting their children from scrutiny. But what happens when those children aren't so innocent? When they're involved in the very conversations shaping people's votes, stoking division, even targeting elected officials? Why should they get a pass? Asterisk, her words hit like a brick through a glass window. For years, political families from both parties had invoked the rule of privacy around their children. But Crockett pushed back on that idea, saying it only held water if the children stayed outside the arena of influence. Once they entered even digitally, they became fair game. Asterisk, Barron Trump. Once seen as a quiet, towering young man silently accompanying his parents, was suddenly at the center of a major debate. Crockett didn't suggest that he was orchestrating any movement, but she was clear in her belief that young people from elite families had long been protected while exercising real influence from behind the scenes. Asterisk, privilege isn't just about money or last names, she said. It's about being able to say things anonymously, shape narratives, and face none of the accountability the rest of us do. If Barron Trump wants to be part of that world, then he can't have it both ways. He can't be anonymous and untouchable. Asterisk, the pushback was immediate. Critics accused Crockett of dragging a young man into public view unfairly, but others pointed out that the timing mattered to Barron had just turned 18, a legal adult. He had been seen more frequently at political events, some even suggesting he might soon step into the public spotlight. Crockett wasn't speculating on who he was as a person. She was pointing at a larger issue, the shield of privilege that had followed him for years, even as whispers of online activity swirled around him. Asterisk, her decision to speak openly about Barron wasn't rooted in personal attack. It was rooted in a challenge to the norms that dictate who gets held accountable. In public discourse, by naming him and raising uncomfortable but necessary questions, she reframed the discussion not just about Barron Trump, but about all individuals who operate from the shadows of power while escaping scrutiny. And for the first time, name wasn't mentioned with pity or innocence. It was part of a much larger reckoning. As the segment continued, Jasmine Crockett leaned forward in her seat, clearly prepared for the backlash her words might bring. But what came next wasn't just bolded, was calculated. Of screenshots had been loaded in advance, their contents blurred for television but unmistakably, marked with familiar language and usernames that had been circulating on fringe political message boards. This was no accident. I'm not saying the FBI has knocked on anyone's door, she said, her voice calm but direct. "But what I am saying is that there are some very interesting online patterns being linked to someone with close ties to the Trump family specifically." The images behind her appeared to show posts under pseudonymous usernames that had, over the last year, posted cryptic defenses of Donald Trump. Thinly veiled attacks on political opponents. More chilling were the timestamps posts made during odd hours, using unique language, with IP traces reportedly tied to Trump-owned properties. You'll see what I mean when we come back stronger, and they think I'm a kid, but I see what they're doing. While nothing explicitly tied them to Barron Trump, online sleuths had drawn connections writing style, references to private events, and even the slang used, which aligned more closely with Gen Z internet culture than with older operatives. Crockett didn't accuse him outright. If Barron Trump is the one behind these accounts, and I'm not saying he is, then the American public deserves to know who is shaping their opinions and steering the culture wars from behind a keyboard. Close to his orbit is doing it, using his position and anonymity as cover. This was the moment the broadcast crossed into uncharted territory. Discussing a former president's teenage son was taboo in most political circles. But Crockett had shattered that wall not by attacking his character, but by shining a light on the implications of his alleged actions. Admissions revoked, job offers rescinded. Barron, if indeed involved, would never face the same kind of accountability. That, she argued, was a privilege rooted not just in his wealth. Crockett cited examples of online radicalization, misinformation campaigns, and how young influencers, both known and anonymous, have dramatically shaped political discourse in recent years. So why, she asked, should someone like Barron Trump get a free pass if he's part of that machine? Attacking public officials or using your platform, however, hidden to sway public opinion, then that's not youth anymore. That's engagement. As Crockett finished speaking, social media exploded. Some called her reckless, suggesting she crossed ethical boundaries. Media don't touch the children of political dynasties. Especially not that family. What made the moment even more surreal was the speed at which comparing language, timestamps, even gaming preferences and digital avatars that matched Barron's known interests. Online savvy and politically aware than his quiet public demeanor suggested. Crockett didn't double down or walk anything back. She had said what she came to say, provoking and lifting the veil on the digital activities of those with disproportionate influence. In doing so, she turned Barron Trump, long considered a background figure in American politics, into a question mark, not just about his involvement, but about how much sway the next generation of political elites might already have. The moment Jasmine Crockett's segment aired, shockwaves moved swiftly through every corner of political media, but none more visibly than in the Trump family's digital echo chamber. What had started as a controlled discussion about political youth had erupted into something deeply personal by the time Crockett's remarks and visuals were clipped, captioned, and circulated across platforms. One name trended above all: Barron Trump, for years. Barron had been treated as an enigma, tall, silent, and ever-present beside his father, but rarely heard. His presence at political events was infrequent, and even when seen, he never spoke publicly. But after Crockett's comments, which questioned whether he had been anonymously engaging in online political discourse, his silence was no longer sustainable. The accusations, though carefully worded, carried weight. They didn't just challenge his privacy, they challenged the myth of his non-involvement. It didn't take long. Just hours after Crockett's interview aired, an account long speculated to be connected to Barron, one that had previously existed in a gray zone of celebrity followed yet content scares, suddenly became active. The bio changed, the profile photo updated, and then a message appeared. Lies. I'm coming. Just 3 words. No elaboration, but the internet exploded. People weren't just shocked that he posted, they were stunned that he addressed the controversy directly. In true Trumpian fashion, the words weren't soft or conciliatory, they were defiant. It was his first ever public response to a political statement involving him. There was no mistaking that it was about Crockett. The timing was too perfect. The tone, to pointed almost instantly. Conservative influencers and commentators rallied around him. Barron is standing up, one tweeted. "The silent Trump no more," said another. Fox News ran a segment calling Crockett's remarks a low blow and praising Barron for clapping back with what they dubbed a new kind of confidence. Overnight, he became a symbol not of innocence, but of retaliation. Asterisk, the tone from Trump world quickly shifted. Donald Trump himself didn't comment directly, but those close to him began referencing Barron more publicly, even hinting that he was watching closely and learning quickly. Lara Trump mentioned him during a podcast appearance, saying, "Barron is smart, he sees everything, and he's more tuned in than people think." Asterisk, suddenly, Barron's image went from being the untouched youngest son to a looming political heir. The way his online activity, whether real or assumed, was discussed, gave him a new kind of power. The post lies, "I'm coming," became a rallying cry for some, printed on merchandise, turned into memes, and used as a warning from supporters to critics like Crockett. Asterisk, but Crockett remained unfazed. When asked about Barron's post, she replied dryly, "If it's lies, then come clarify." But silence all these years, followed by a vague threat, doesn't help your case. Asterisk, what made Barron's post so consequential wasn't just what it said did, was the fact that he said anything at all. It marked the end of his image as the sheltered, uninvolved teenager. Whether intentional or not, Barron had taken a step into the ring, and that shift carried long-term implications. Asterisk, for the first time. People started wondering, was Barron being groomed to follow in his father's footsteps? Was his sudden appearance online a soft launch of political engagement? His age, his timing, and his name created the perfect storm of curiosity and projection. Asterisk, suddenly, journalists were reviewing his past appearances, speeches by family members referencing him, and even school essays that had been anonymously published in elite prep school publications. Nothing concrete surfaced, but the message was clear: Barron Trump, once protected by silence, was now a player even, if only by suggestion. Asterisk, in political circles. The strategic consequences were being discussed more seriously. If he was testing the waters, his next move would matter. If he stayed silent again, people would question whether his first post was a family-approved counterstrike. If he kept posting, the media would begin dissecting his every word. And if Crockett's allegations about hidden online activity had any merit, then Barron's response had only added gasoline to a fire, or the start of something bigger. Barron Trump's response shook the rules of engagement. He had been mentioned many times before, but never like this, and never with such a clear signal that he might be ready to speak back. The ripple effect of Jasmine Crockett's televised remarks didn't end with a few viral clips or social media backlash. It ignited a full-scale national conversation about boundaries, privilege, and the shifting line between public and private life for political families. And at the center of it, surprisingly, stood Barron Trump, no longer shielded by silence, but thrust into a moment of public reckoning. Asterisk, as soon as Crockett's segment aired, the debate took shape in two very distinct camps. On one side were those who viewed her comments as an unforgivable attack on a young man who had, until now, largely remained out of the political spotlight. Conservative commentators, right-wing networks, and Trump family allies leapt to Barron's defense. They accused Crockett of exploiting his name for attention, calling her claims baseless character assassination and a calculated smear campaign. Asterisk, the reaction wasn't just rhetorical iron, was organized. Barron's name trended globally on social media, and within hours, right-wing influencers began circulating old photos of him at school events or quiet family moments, painting a picture of an innocent teenager targeted by an overly aggressive politician. There were calls for Crockett to apologize, with some demanding she face consequences in Congress for what they called an attack on a private citizen. Hashtags like #ProtectBarron and #ShameOnCrockett appeared overnight. Asterisk, but the other side of the argument was just as loud and far more nuanced. A wave of commentators, journalists, and even some former political aides began to push back on the idea that Barron was being attacked. Instead, they reframed Crockett's words as an uncomfortable but necessary reckoning. Her critics, they argued, were not defending privacy, they were defending power. Asterisk, Crockett's point wasn't just about Barron Trump as an individual, it was about a pattern. The children of powerful families, especially those raised in political dynasties, often operate in a protected gray zone. They're insulated from scrutiny, even as they engage subtly or directly in the political realm, whether it's giving speeches, appearing at rallies, or, as Crockett implied, shaping conversations through anonymous online personas. The impact is the same. They influence, but they rarely face consequences. Asterisk, that's what made this moment different. For once, someone wasn't tiptoeing around the Trump family name. Someone had dared to raise a mirror and ask whether Barron's presumed innocence was being used as a shield, and more importantly, whether the public deserved to ask questions if that innocence no longer matched reality. Asterisk, as pundits dissected Crockett's segment, they began revisiting Barron's recent appearances. He had been seen at more political events, standing beside his father in more deliberate, visible ways. At the Republican National Convention, his presence had drawn attention for its symbolism and image of continuity. The next Trump waiting, in the wings, while he hadn't spoken, his very presence suggested more than simple family loyalty. Asterisk, it was this visibility that Crockett was responding to. Her argument wasn't random, it was contextual. She was pushing back against the idea that he could appear at high-level political events, possibly engage in online rhetoric, and still be considered completely off-limits. To her, and to many watching, that double standard revealed something deeper about how privilege shields accountability in American politics. Asterisk, the cultural impact was undeniable. Editorials appeared in major publications, some defending Barron's right to privacy, others arguing that with adulthood comes scrutiny, especially for someone born into one of the most powerful and controversial families in the country. Political talk shows devoted entire segments to the ethics of Crockett's comments. Was it fair? Was it reckless? Or was it a long overdue conversation? Asterisk, even some moderates and traditionally cautious media figures admitted that the moment had exposed an uncomfortable truth. If Barron Trump was being groomed for political life, then his ideas, actions, and presence needed to be examined not as a child, but as an emerging figure with influence. That's what Crockett was challenging. The myth that someone could operate behind the scenes while remaining immune to scrutiny simply because of age or last name. Asterisk. The result wasn't just a political skirmish. It was a cultural shift. For the first time, the American public was forced to ask hard questions about where the line should be drawn, about who gets the benefit of silence and who doesn't. And in that storm of commentary, opinion, and backlash, Barron Trump was no longer just a figure in the background. He was a symbol of privilege, potential, and the uncomfortable truth that even the youngest names in politics don't exist outside the reach of accountability forever. In the aftermath of Jasmine Crockett's remarks and the storm they unleashed, America found itself grappling with more than just the question of Barron Trump's role in politics. It was confronting its own double standards. The media frenzy, the social media blowback, and the sharp polarization surrounding the issue weren't merely about one individual. They were about a deeper reckoning. How the children of power are discussed, defended, or dissected, depending on which family they belong to and which political narrative they serve. Asterisk, Crockett didn't claim certainty. She didn't present hard proof. What she did was ask questions, publicly, forcefully, and in a way that pierced the long-standing wall of silence surrounding one of the most protected names in American political history. And in doing so, she forced an uncomfortable truth into the light. Influence doesn't always come with a title or a microphone. Sometimes it hides behind privilege, age, until now mostly associated with youth, and silence became a litmus test for how far America is willing to go in either shielding or scrutinizing political families. While critics accused Crockett of crossing a moral line, supporters argued she had exposed a necessary hypocrisy that young adults from elite circles often shape narratives behind the curtain, immune from the consequences others face. In many ways, Barron became both the subject and the symbol of that hypocrisy. Asterisk, the response from the Trump sphere only confirmed what Crockett had hinted at, that Barron, whether passively or actively, holds a certain symbolic power. The immediate defense, the viral response, and the resurgence of his public presence all pointed to one reality. He is no longer invisible. Political arena. What this moment truly exposed was a cultural shift. Younger generations are more engaged, more politically aware, and more digitally active than ever before. That includes the children of presidents. The idea that they can participate through real-world appearances or anonymous online activity without being scrutinized is no longer sustainable. Accountability doesn't discriminate by age once influence is exercised. That's the essence of Crockett's message. Ultimately, the firestorm wasn't about whether Barron Trump is guilty of anything. It was about whether America is ready to treat all power around the quiet, inherited kind with the same level of inquiry and challenge. Crockett's choice to name him wasn't about personal animosity. It was about principle. And the fact that her remarks ignited such a reaction only proves how much weight his name already carries. In the coming months, Barron may retreat into silence again, or he may emerge with a voice and a platform of his own. Either way, the public perception of him has fundamentally changed. He is no longer just the quiet son in the background. Thanks to a few provocative minutes on live television, the conversation has begun, and it's one that won't be easily silenced.